Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Winners and Whiners Survivor Showdown Show, week number 2. I'm Andrew Champagne alongside Scott Steehn, and if you missed us last week, well, you missed a fair bit, but Scott, I got to tell you, all in all, before we go into our picks for week number 2, I want to give a shout out to the people that are in our Winners and Whiners Survivor contest for doing significantly better than most contests of that ilk.
Yeah.
Over on ESPN, more than 40% of players are already out after week number 1. In our contest, which we wound up getting 51 entries for, only a third are out. So if you're still alive at this point, pat yourselves on the back. All in all, pretty strong week for us in week number 1, Scott.
We're still around, buddy. Thrills, chills, and one team in particular that was very disappointing, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But yeah, it's good. It's good to be here. It's good to still be breathing. This is going to be a tough show to do after I go out. It's going to be a lot more difficult. So yeah, don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. Use that code Survivor to get yourself 20% off any premium product over there at winnersandwhiners.com. So, yeah, you want to talk about the elephant in the room, or more aptly, the tiger in the room?
I do. So there was one game in particular last week that went directly against popular picks in survivor pools. It was not just us. There's a lot of dead money floating around now in the Circus Survivor contest, which has a significantly steeper entry fee than ours, Scott.
That's absolutely true.
We are, of course, referring to the Cincinnati Bengals, and we need to yield to our producer, Lenny, who has cooked up something that certainly seems appropriate. I busted up laughing when we saw that for the first time in our pre-show meeting. So yes, if you had the Bengals, you have our sympathies. We stayed away from the Bengals because of a couple of different reasons. For one, we weren't quite sure about Joe Burrow. We weren't quite sure about Jamar Chase. But Scott, that was shocking.
Oh, it was stunning, and then there was a certain amount of, well, we'll save a great team like that for later in the season, and that's another reason that we stayed away in week 1. Bengals had a lot of questions, and they got some of them answered. The answers weren't particularly pretty. My goodness, that was never close, man. They were never close to winning, let alone covering the 8.5 or 7.5 or whatever number you got. That it went back and forth as Chase decided whether he was going to play or not. And brutal game. I think, Andrew, every week we may not have one that dramatic, because I think was that the biggest spread on the board, if I remember correctly.
I believe it was, yes.
I think that was the Bengals were the biggest favorite. So I'm not making the bold prediction that every week the biggest favorite is going to lose outright, but we're definitely going to see some surprises and upsets, and that's what makes it fun. So I'm just happy to be here after week 1, man. I really am.
That's for sure. Now, I'm going to run through a couple of the other popular picks in our Survivor contest over on ESPN. 9 of you picked the Bills over the Cardinals. That was a pretty darn close game most of the way. 8 of you picked the Seahawks over the Broncos, and I got to tell you, that was not an easy game to watch. The Broncos somehow got 2 safeties and lost, which I believe is a first in the history of the National Football League. 6 of you, Scott included, picked the Saints over the Panthers. So congratulations there. You want to talk about a game that was never in doubt? Oh boy.
Yeah, that was I was happy for that one. My wallet didn't do too well with a lot of my picks this weekend. At least on the personal side. Luckily, Andrew, I was able to give out 2 of my 3 winners were my paid picks. So that's always the way you want it. But my book was pretty happy with my personal plays, and one of the ones that I did win on was a survivor pick, and that was the Saints. Like you said, that was the most lopsided game on the board. It was 17-0 after the first quarter, and just like a couple of the other ones were never in doubt, this one was never in doubt. Carolina looked absolutely overmatched in just about every facet of the game. Bryce Young, spoiler alert, still looks terrible.
Yeah, it's tough because he doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of help down there. So part of me feels really bad for him. But on the flip side, it's not a pretty picture down there in Carolina. Also, if you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was a very good week for you. Fun game to watch, I gotta say. Plenty of offense in that game. The Bucs moved up and down the field. Jaden Daniels did not look terrible in his first game under center for the Washington Commanders, but the Bucs wind up winning that game fairly comfortably. So, if you went with either of our safe picks for a week one of Survivor, pat yourself on the back. You are more fortunate than those that wound up playing the Bengals. Now, we did differ on our strategic pick last week.
The moment Andrew's been waiting all week for. Here we go.
That team in the same game. Scott, what happened here?
Giants are still just awful. Just absolutely dreadful. No offense. Just no offense at all. A couple of quarterbacks that we expected to do better this year, being healthy, clean slate, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, they look like their old selves, man. And it's not – it wasn't pretty. That was, I hate to say it. This was a game for about the first 5 or 6 minutes. Giants kicked a field goal. It was 7-3, and they're like, okay, we're right there. Let's go. And then the Giants did absolutely nothing from there on out. Minnesota pretty much dominated that game. Terrible pick. Bad strategy. A strategic pick. Bad strategic pick. Bad pick.
That pick 6 from Andrew Van Ginkel for me was okay, stick a fork in them. They're done. Because Van Ginkel not only jumped that route, there was nobody within 10 yards of him on either side. He could have moonwalked his way into the end zone. And the Sam Darnold revenge tour gets off to a 1-0 start. I don't know how many other times you're going to want to take the Vikings over the course of the season, which is the reason I gave them out as my strategic pick in week number 1. So
Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, the 2 early favorites for MVP. What year am I living in, Andrew?
Hey, I'm thoroughly okay with this Baker Mayfield resurgence. Bucs looked pretty good last weekend. Not sure when you're going to want them moving forward, because I do think they have a tough schedule with a lot of close games. That's part of the reason why I gave them out as my safe pick, because that to me seemed like the best spot for which you could use them. Once again, we are profiling our Winners and Whiners Survivor contest. But if you're unfamiliar with Winners and Whiners and what we do, go on down below, hit some of those links in the description. Use the promo code Survivor for 20% off any item in the Winners and Whiners store. And make sure you like and subscribe our content. It makes it a lot easier for us to be able to do shows like the Winners and Whiners Survivor Showdown. You can also take a look at the Back to School show that Scott does for college football. That's an absolute blast. A little less fun for me last week because Michigan never once looked like a winner against Texas. And as the old adage goes, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks.
Zero. You have 0 quarterbacks. Yeah. Yep. And of course, don't forget to check out winnersandwhiners.com. Just a fantastic free resource as a standalone site. Andrew and his team do a great job writing up pretty much every game, every day, if it's available in the United States. One of the major sports, he's writing about it. And man, it just comes in so handy this time of year with college football, when you maybe not so familiar with some of these lower tier teams. Go to winnersandwhiners.com, read the free previews, the picks, the predictions. It's all right there for you laid out. So I just wanted to give a semi plug and a full kudos to Andrew and his team of great writers over there at Winners and Whiners. So
appreciate that greatly. Thank you, Scott. Moving back to the NFL for week number 2 now, though, we're going to get into our safe picks and our strategic picks for this upcoming week. Now, one thing that I will tell you, if you got through week 1, don't forget to play week 2. There is absolutely no worse way to lose a survivor pool. Forget the Bengals for a minute. Than by not playing, especially after you have had several weeks where you wind up rolling, you've outlasted a bunch of people, and then you have no entry. Make sure, whatever your opinions are, that you wind up playing them. It sounds so simple, Scott, but I'm looking at our pool and we had 2 players that wound up getting eliminated week 1 because they didn't have an entry. And that's heartbreaking.
Yep. When you're over there, you're going to be on ESPN at some point during the week. Just make a mental note to make your pick. Take a look at the board and get that pick in. That's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. It's one thing for the Bengals to beat you. It's another thing to beat yourself.
Yeah, that's for sure. So hopefully in week number 2, we'll be able to give you some winners. And thankfully, we're all operating on 4 different games for this one. We don't have any head-to-head conflict. I believe Scott learned his lesson from week number 1.
Uncle,
thank you.
Waving the white flag, baby.
Yep. So We'll start off with our safe picks for week number 2. These are the ones that, okay, we just want to get through this week. And with that in mind, my safe pick is a very good team, but one that I think has a very, very difficult schedule, maybe a little bit more difficult than it initially looked. I'm referring to the Baltimore Ravens, who are a massive favorite this week over the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think justifiably so. The Ravens, of course, took the Chiefs to the limit in their opening night game. Isaiah Likely not getting his foot in bounds for the game tying touchdown is still burned in the minds of a lot of Ravens fans. The Raiders just are not that good. They got outplayed in every facet of the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, including coaching. I have no idea what Antonio Pierce was thinking, punting the ball in Charger territory down one score in the fourth quarter. Of course, it wound up coming back to bite him. The Ravens wind up playing in a very tough division. Yes, they're going to win a fair amount of games. They're going to be favored in a fair amount of games. This, I think, is the safest spot to use the Ravens, though, because I don't think there's any way in which the Raiders match up with Baltimore. I think the Ravens are going to be playing with a little bit of an edge after their week 1 letdown. They had a couple of extra days to prepare for this one because remember, their opener was on Thursday night. I just see so many things here. And while it is an overwhelming choice, and while a lot of Survivor players are probably going to land here, I can't get too cute. This one, Scott, to me, seems like a slam dunk.
All right, very good. Yeah, that's a really good Ravens team. As a KC fan who, of course, watched that game, that's a very good Ravens team. I worry about. I know this is probably preaching to the choir of Baltimore fans, but I do worry about Lamar's ability to throw the ball down the field. He just doesn't seem quite as accurate as he needs to be, and of course, we saw him from the 13 there at the end of the game. He definitely wasn't as accurate as he needed to be on the penultimate play there before the toe tap, or the lack of toe tap rather. So missed the wide open receiver there in the back of the end zone. So, but I think this is a good spot for him. I think this is a good get well spot. They've had extra rest, and I think this is a solid play going in there. And they do have a tough schedule playing there in the NFC North. So you're going to use the Ravens at some point. I think this is a good spot.
That's for sure. Scott, what do you have?
I'm going to step out a little bit. I'm going to take another AFC North team, but I'm heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers as they travel to Denver.
I think you're jumping ahead a little bit.
You're right.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Right. Yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, you're right. I've got the Chargers, buddy. That's absolutely correct. Thank you, producer Lenny. I'm going to play a bold strategy this season, Andrew. I'm just going to fade the Panthers every week. No, but that is the way it appears. But I like the way this Chargers team played last week with a new emphasis on playing hard-nosed football, running the ball, and giving Herbert a better opportunity to take shots where he has the advantage as far as the offense versus the defense, and not just throwing the ball on every play. Yeah, the Raiders are a bad team, but the Chargers absolutely took care of business against them. And the Panthers, I'm not sure there's a word to describe how awful they played against the Saints. I think they're a better team than that, sure. But I think this is a great spot for the Chargers. This is a Chargers team that I'm not particularly high on. I like the way they played in week 1. I'm not sure how likely I am to use them as the season goes on. They've got a tough schedule. Of course, the AFC West matches up with the NFC South and the AFC North. So I don't know how many spots we're going to have to take the Chargers, maybe against the Broncos at some point, but I'm going to write them right here. This is my safe pick, Chargers over the Panthers.
There's a lot of logic in that. I was very impressed with their run game. We see J.K. Dobbins, such an easy guy to root for, given everything that he has had to overcome to get back to where he was last week, where he ran all over the Raiders. The Charger defense, I thought, played very well, albeit against a quarterback that I don't think is all that great. But I can't fault the logic there with the Chargers. Certainly, if you're looking for a safe pick that has a hint of strategy to it, simply because if you're betting on the Chargers to potentially cool off as the year goes on, maybe this is the spot in which you want to take them. So can't quite fault that logic too much as we go to our strategic picks for week number 2. And Scott, your strategy was to fade the Carolina Panthers. My strategy, at least in the short term, fade the heck out of the New York Football Giants. My strategic pick, the Washington Commanders, who I went against last week. But I will tell you, kidding aside, this isn't just a fade on the Giants. I think there's stuff to like with Jaden Daniels under center. I'm not saying he was great last week, but I will say he made some plays. He showed up where his team needed him to show up. And it's not like the Commander defense did him any favors, giving up 37 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think there's stuff to like with him. And I think there's reason to move forward with him and have some confidence. And dare I say it, some hope. That is a very dangerous thing for fans of a franchise that has struggled in many ways over the last, 10, 15, 20 years. I think the Commanders may not be a terrible football team this year. The same cannot be said for the New York Football Giants. When your coach has to come out and reaffirm that Daniel Jones, who is getting paid $40 million a year, is your starting quarterback after one game, I have no confidence in the New York Giants at all whatsoever. I don't think the Commanders are great, but I do think they could be the next best thing to being good, which is being fun. And I think the Commanders have a chance to move the ball down the field and put up some points against a team that can't possibly keep up because, hey, given what we saw last week, why the heck would you trust the Giants? Give me the Commanders at home against a very bad team in week number 2. Can't say I'm overly confident about using them the rest of the way. So if you're looking for a pick that's got some strategy to it, I don't think you're going to feel bad about using the Commanders here and not having them the rest of the year, because this seems like a really logical spot for them.
Yeah, that's entirely fair and very good strategy to try to use teams that you don't think you're going to use for the rest of the season. And that's kind of what I'm going to look at with my strategic pick as well. I think obviously we teased that a little bit earlier, but I tell you, I'm a little angry at the Washington Commanders right now because they let me down last week. I thought they would have a better performance against Tampa Bay. I flew in the face of the rookie quarterback on the road first start trend. I said, well, this kid's different. Well, he wasn't, but I do see some glimmers of hope there. I'm not sure I'm quite as high on him as you are. So good strategy. I think you're probably going to be saved by the fact the Giants are just a dreadful football team. So even if the Commanders aren't anywhere approaching good, I think they'll be good enough for this one.
Well, one thing I will say before you go on to the Steelers is let's not forget Tampa Bay's a very good defense, coached by a very good defensive coach. This wasn't going up against 11 replacement level guys. This was a defense led by some very, very good players. And I'm not saying Jaden Daniels is great. I am saying that he, at the very least, looked like an NFL quarterback, which we cannot say about several other NFL quarterbacks to this point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely true. And yeah, and that just leads us right into it. I'm gonna go with the Pittsburgh Steelers as my strategic pick as they travel to Denver to take on the Broncos. I love Mike Tomlin on the road. He always has this team ready to go. Their road record, especially against the spread, is just absolutely ridiculous. But they went on the road last week down there to Atlanta, a Falcons team with a win total for the season of 9.5, and they absolutely shut that team down. Cousins threw for just 137. They were able to average just 4 yards per carry. The Pittsburgh offense, you know what? They're always going to be a work in progress. I don't care if it's Justin Fields or Dangerous. They're always going to be a run-first team, and indeed they were. They averaged just 3.3 yards per carry, Andrew, but when you run it 41 times, that works out just fine. Of course, 14 of those carries were from Justin Fields, who averaged just over 4 yards per carry. But this is a Pittsburgh team that is absolutely dedicated to running the football. I don't think the Denver defense is going to be up to the task. I think this is a good spot to use Pittsburgh. I like them there against the Broncos.
So safe picks. I am going with the Baltimore Ravens. Scott is going with the Los Angeles Chargers. Strategic picks you can see down below. I'm riding with the Commanders. Scott riding with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Couple of fun games this week. Nothing quite like the week 1 slate where it seemed like there were more evenly matched games, but we do think there's room for some opportunity to use a couple of teams that maybe you don't necessarily want to use in the months ahead. Just get through week 2, get out of the way, and hopefully avoid the fates of the people that picked the Bengals in week 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. I hope we have, what are we at, 35 right now? 34. I hope
34, yes.
we have 34 when we come back and do this next week, Andrew.
That would be great. If you're in this Survivor contest, please remember, go pick your team. Don't get shut out. Make sure you keep on participating. This is a season-long contest with some fabulous prizes attached to it that you definitely don't want to miss out on. If you're seeing our content for the first time, go on down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and use the promo code SURVIVOR in the store at winnersandwhiners.com for 20% off any product. Scott, anything else to add?
Don't forget to email us if you are in the contest at winnersandwhinerssurvivorcontest.com. Hit me up, or excuse me, Winners and Whiners Survivor Contest at gmail.com. Let us know your email address. Make sure we can get you your $5 certificate for free play over there on the Winners and Whiners site. That's it for me, Andrew.
Good reminder, Scott, to those of you out there. As a reminder, again, down below, like, comment, subscribe, all the fun things. Play the Survivor contest. Best of luck in your Survivor contest this week and all season long. We will be right back here next week for another episode of the Winners and Whiners Survivor Showdown.